Hello, my name's Alicia Richardson, and I am a third grade teacher. Third grade is such an important and crucial year for students, especially in elementary school. Students go from being kind of like the babies of the school to they're starting to grow up a little bit more and they're starting to take all these tests and learn all these things. So it's a very important year for students. Um, they start off in the beginning of the year kind of building on that not the knowledge that they've learned in K through second grade, and they're starting to multiply. They're using different strategies like repeated addition, an array, and different strategies like that in order to help them with their multiplication. And as they progress through the year, they're using those same strategies, but maybe with like different numbers, or maybe they're building on to what they already know of multiplication to help them with solve other math problems. So in the beginning of the year, they are seeing a lot of multiplying, excuse me, multiplying and dividing with using the different strategies, using number lines, things like that are really going to help them to solve the answer or solve for their answers. And as they continue to progress, it'll become where multiplying is almost the same thing as division. They're just using the opposite strategy for each of them. So instead of repeated addition, we're doing repeated subtraction. And instead of a number line going one way, we're just going to go the opposite way. So all these strategies all kind of build on to one another. Um, and as they grow, they learn these strategies. They continue to use different representations to understand how they're getting their answer at all throughout the year. We want them to be able to say, well, this is how I got my answer and this is why I know it's right. Well, even if they maybe are wrong, we want them to be able to explain how they got it. So we as the teacher and maybe even as parents can help them to say, well, I understand how you got your answer, but let me maybe help you with this part of it so they can get to the right answer. And we can understand where their thought process is going. Students will then, not only with multiplying and dividing, they're going to soon then go to maybe two-step problems that still builds on from that addition and subtraction from the previous grades. And it might not just be addition and subtraction. It may be some multiplying and dividing in there too, but it's requiring them to do more than one step in a problem, which is something they're not as used to, right? They're used to it saying, well, how many more do they have left? And no, we have to do a little bit more than that. They have to be able to interpret in different graphs and not number lines, but like multiplication charts as they read the problem. How can they get their answer out of that? Um, they are going to have to, or we really need them to be able to know when to like decompose numbers and then find the sum and differences of those numbers. So, and if they're solving, whether that be a word problem or if we ask them to break something apart, can they do that? And a part of that is something they build on from second grade, but it just, gets a little bit further, a little bit more advanced as they go on through their years in school. Um, Also, whenever they do begin to like multiply and divide, if we're asking them to multiply, say, 40 times 3, if they already know what 4 times 3 is, how can they build on to that knowledge? How can that help them answer the problem? Um, and being able to, even if they can show it in a model, how can they split it up? How can they show their thinking is really all it is. And this will continue to grow, and they'll be using different place values still, same concepts from kindergarten to second grade, again just building on to that some more. As they go, they start talking about fraction sum in the lower grades, but then we just kind of, they have to start comparing them and they have to start showing them on a number line. How can they see where exactly this fraction lays there? How can they identify how many parts of the fraction there are? It gets kind of in depth with that, and it can get a little confusing with certain things, but again, this is what they'll be asked to do, and can they understand, well, this is how I know this is the right answer? How can they explain where they're getting their answer from? They'll also be mixing fractions and shapes as well. So how many parts are in the shape, or how many of the pieces of the shape are shaded in, things like that they'll be asked to do. And comparing fractions is the biggest one. Can they compare them just by looking at the fraction themselves, and can they also compare them when they have pictures in front of them that show them what's going on? They'll be asked to tell and write the time, sometimes to the nearest minute or to the nearest hour. Can they show that on a number line? Things like that will also be important. They'll also talk about different measurements. Same thing like inches and feet, but then we're also going to talk about like capacity and weight with gallons, quarts, cups, things like that, and talk about length and weight, and just those different customary units they'll be asked to look at. And then from there is still a little bit more measuring, still looking at and understanding graphs. So if there's a key given to them at the bottom of the graph that say, if you see one circle that represents 4 books that were read, can they interpret that and answer questions about that? And then one of the other biggest pieces is being able to understand like area and perimeter. Again, kind of like with measurement, but can they understand those difference between the two of them? And just especially with area and perimeter, students will kind of mix up the two of them, and they may want to add for one and multiply for the other, but can they say, okay, has to be done with that, and then can they prove their answer to say, this is why I got that answer? Or another part of that is, can they find the missing side of a shape, whether that be with area or perimeter, and can they use the strategies given to them to help them solve that? Especially that's going to be important for the area piece of it when multiplying and dividing, because area isn't something we start immediately in the beginning, but it does come towards a little bit the middle of the year, so they'll be asked to do that. And when they do that, can they use what they know from multiplying and dividing to help them solve those area problems that are being asked? But all of this is what the students will need to know as far as are things they'll need to do when they're in 3rd grade. It is a lot, and it's a lot, especially because now they have to take these big tests. Some students have to take the check-ins, others may not, but it's a lot they have to do, and they have to sit there for such a long time, and they're not really used to that. So it's a lot of kind of maturing and growing the students have to do, but it's important work, and they'll also find it maybe a lot maybe enjoyable as well. But thank you, and if you have any questions, please let me know.